The INFJ personality type has a strange effect on people. They don't try to start conflict or make others uncomfortable, yet somehow people often feel uneasy or defensive around them. It's not because the INFJ is rude or harsh. In fact, they're usually gentle and thoughtful. But their presence has a quiet intensity that makes others confront things they might prefer to ignore. INFJs are deeply intuitive and emotionally aware. They notice what isn't being said. They see through small talk, pick up on hidden emotions, and often sense tension that others try to hide. When an INFJ speaks or reacts, it can feel like they're looking straight into someone's private thoughts. That level of awareness can make people feel exposed, and exposure almost always brings defensiveness. The INFJ doesn't mean to make people feel this way. Their goal is usually understanding, not confrontation. But because they value truth and authenticity so strongly, they often bring uncomfortable feelings to the surface. People who aren't ready for that kind of emotional clarity can react with denial, irritation, or defensiveness. This dynamic can show up anywhere, at work, in friendships, or in romantic relationships. Someone might feel like the INFJ is judging them when they're not. They might take a simple question as an attack. They might even feel nervous or guilty around an INFJ without knowing why. The reason is that INFJs reflect emotional honesty. Just by being themselves, they highlight when something doesn't align. In this video, we'll explore 6 reasons why INFJs make others overly defensive. Understanding these reasons helps both sides. It helps INFJs avoid taking people's reactions personally, and it helps others see that what feels like judgment is often just truth delivered without words. Reason number 1. Their emotional depth exposes hidden issues. INFJs feel emotions deeply. They don't just sense their own feelings, they sense everyone else's too. When they talk to someone, they don't stay on the surface. They instinctively look for the emotion behind the words. If someone says they're fine but clearly isn't, the INFJ will notice. They might ask a simple but piercing question like, "Are you sure you're okay?" That moment alone can make people defensive. The reason is simple. Many people avoid their real emotions. They bury discomfort, hide insecurity, and pretend to be in control. When an INFJ sees through that, it feels like exposure. Suddenly, the mask doesn't work anymore, and that's unsettling. The person feels seen in a way they didn't choose to be. INFJs don't do this to embarrass anyone. They just can't ignore emotional truth. Their empathy is sharp and their curiosity runs deep. They want to understand, to help, or to connect more genuinely. But not everyone wants to be understood that way. Some people would rather stay hidden behind a confident front. In social or romantic settings, this can cause tension. The INFJ might ask thoughtful questions or give observations that feel too personal. Something as innocent as, "You seem tired lately," can sound like a challenge to someone who's avoiding their feelings. That person might get defensive, insisting they're fine, even though the INFJ knows they're not. The truth is, INFJs mirror emotions. When they're near someone who's suppressing feelings, those feelings come up. Their calm presence makes people notice their own discomfort. For emotionally mature people, that's refreshing. It opens doors to honesty. But for others, it feels like being caught off guard. This is one of the biggest reasons people become defensive around INFJs. They don't mean to expose others, but their emotional awareness naturally brings the truth into the light. And when truth shows up unexpectedly, most people's first instinct is to protect themselves. Reason number 2. Their intuitive insight can feel like criticism. INFJs have strong intuition. They often know what's going on before anyone says it out loud. They can sense when someone's stressed, lying, or hiding something. This insight is one of their greatest strengths, but it's also one of the main reasons people feel defensive around them. When an INFJ points something out, they're usually trying to help. They might say, "It seems like you're unsure about this," or "I feel like something's bothering you." To them, this is empathy. But to others, it can feel like an accusation. The other person might think, "How do they know that?" Or, "Why are they assuming things about me?" That confusion turns into defensiveness. INFJs rarely mean to make people feel attacked. They're just honest about what they sense. But because their insights cut through pretense, they can sound like criticism even when spoken kindly. It's not what they say, it's how accurate it is. Being seen so clearly can feel uncomfortable for someone who isn't used to emotional honesty. In professional settings, this can be especially tricky. If an INFJ points out an issue or pattern others missed, people may feel embarrassed instead of grateful. It's hard for many to accept that someone else can see the truth without being told. Instead of appreciating the insight, they defend their ego. In relationships, their intuition can make partners feel vulnerable. The INFJ might sense something's wrong before the partner does. They'll ask about it, not to accuse, but to understand. Yet the other person might deny it, only to realize later the INFJ was right. That experience leaves them uneasy. Being understood that deeply can feel like losing emotional privacy. INFJs must be careful with how they share their insights. Their accuracy is powerful, but power can intimidate. When they speak with gentleness and timing, people are more likely to hear the message instead of reacting defensively. Still, no matter how softly they speak, their insight alone can unsettle those who prefer to keep their truths hidden. Reason number 3, their high standards make people feel judged. INFJs have high internal standards. They strive to live with honesty, integrity, and purpose. They expect the same from themselves and quietly hope for it in others. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. They believe in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. But to people who don't share those same values, the INFJ's presence can feel like silent judgment. They rarely preach or criticize openly, but their actions speak loudly. They hold themselves to moral and emotional consistency. They try to live authentically and avoid fake behavior. When others see that, they can't help comparing themselves. If someone's not being truthful or consistent, they may start feeling exposed just by being near the INFJ. For example, in a workplace where gossip or shortcuts are normal, an INFJ's quiet integrity can make others uncomfortable. People might accuse them of acting superior when all they're doing is following their conscience. In reality, the INFJ isn't judging anyone, but the contrast between their values and the group's behavior triggers guilt or defensiveness. In relationships, this can show up when the INFJ expects emotional maturity or accountability. They want their partner to communicate honestly and work on problems, not avoid them. To some people, that feels demanding. They might say, "You expect too much," or "You're too serious." What they're really feeling is pressure to meet the INFJ's emotional depth and consistency. INFJs are aware of flaws, including their own. They don't expect perfection. What they can't tolerate is avoidance or dishonesty. When people sense that boundary, they might assume the INFJ is hard to please. But what the INFJ truly wants is sincerity. They can forgive mistakes easily if the other person is honest. Still, their natural intensity can make people nervous. They seem calm on the outside, but their inner moral compass is strong. Others pick up on that and become defensive, even when no one's accusing them of anything. The INFJ doesn't need to say a word. Their presence alone reminds people of what they could be doing better. That quiet moral energy, while inspiring to some, feels threatening to others. It's not judgment, it's integrity. But integrity often reveals the lack of it in those around them. Reason number 4. Their need for meaning disrupts surface harmony. INFJs don't do well with shallow or meaningless interactions. They crave conversations and relationships that feel real, where people talk about what matters. They can handle small talk for a short time, but eventually they'll start asking deeper questions. They'll want to know what you think, what you feel, and why things are the way they are. For many people, this level of depth feels uncomfortable. Most people use surface-level talk as a way to keep peace. They keep things light to avoid conflict or emotional discomfort. But INFJs don't see peace and avoidance as the same thing. They'd rather deal with truth, even if it's awkward. When they push for real meaning, others can feel like the calm, controlled space they built around themselves is being invaded. For example, if an INFJ senses that a friend or partner is hiding something behind jokes or distractions, they might gently ask, "Are you sure you're okay?" Or, "That doesn't sound like you really mean it." The other person might get defensive, insisting that everything's fine. It's not that they're angry at the INFJ, it's that they feel caught between what they show and what's actually true. INFJs challenge people's comfort zones without even trying. Their natural curiosity and emotional insight bring hidden things to light. They're not trying to stir drama, they just can't connect with people on a surface level. They feel emotionally starved when conversations stay shallow for too long. In group settings, this trait can also make them stand out. They'll steer discussions toward topics that matter, purpose, growth, values, while others just want to keep things casual. When people sense that shift, they might feel uneasy or defensive, as if the INFJ is judging them for not being deep enough. But the INFJ doesn't want to judge, they want to understand. They value emotional honesty because it builds stronger connections. The problem is, most people associate meaning with discomfort. So when an INFJ starts searching for truth, others sometimes react as if they're being questioned or analyzed. The irony is that the INFJ's goal is connection, not confrontation. They want to create understanding, not tension. But meaning often challenges people's masks, and when masks start slipping, defenses go up. Reason number 5. Their desire for emotional space is misunderstood as rejection. INFJs need emotional space to stay grounded. They spend so much time feeling and absorbing the emotions of others that their mind becomes crowded. Solitude helps them reset. But to people who don't understand this, that need for space can look like withdrawal or disinterest. In relationships, this often leads to misunderstandings. The INFJ might go quiet for a few days, not because they're upset, but because they need to recharge. Their partner, however, might take it personally. They might think the INFJ is angry or pulling away, and their natural reaction is to become defensive, asking what they did wrong or why the INFJ is being distant. This misunderstanding can create tension quickly. The more the partner pushes for reassurance, the more the INFJ feels pressured. The more the INFJ retreats to get breathing room, the more defensive the other person becomes. It's a cycle built on misreading intention. The same thing happens in friendships and family relationships. The INFJ may skip a social event or stop responding for a short while because they need quiet time. To others, it can look like rejection or disapproval. They might assume the INFJ is judging them, when in reality, the INFJ just needs time alone to think and recover. The truth is, INFJs love deeply, but they need space to love well. Without solitude, they become drained and emotionally foggy. It's not personal, it's their way of staying balanced. But because most people see closeness as constant communication, they take space as a sign of disinterest. That's when defensiveness kicks in. People who truly understand an INFJ learn to give them room without resentment. They realize that when the INFJ returns, they come back calmer, more open and more affectionate. Respecting their need for solitude is one of the best ways to strengthen the connection. When the INFJ feels trusted and free to breathe, they give more of themselves. But when their space is questioned or criticized, they protect themselves by shutting down emotionally. So what others mistake for rejection is really an act of self-preservation. Reason number 6. Their silence or pulling back triggers guilt and defensiveness. NFJs rarely react to conflict the way others do. When something bothers them, they don't usually argue or lash out. They go quiet. Their silence isn't meant to punish, it's how they process. They need time to understand their feelings before they speak. But to the other person, that silence can feel like disapproval, judgment, or rejection. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They assume it means something negative. So when the INFJ stops talking, they start filling in the blanks. They might think, they're mad at me, or I must have done something wrong. That guilt quickly turns into defensiveness. Instead of asking calmly what's wrong, they start explaining or justifying their behavior. The INFJ, meanwhile, is just thinking. They're trying to choose their words carefully. They don't want to say something hurtful in the heat of the moment. But while they're quiet, the other person's anxiety grows. They misread the pause as a form of judgment. This reaction is especially common because INFJs have strong, steady energy. Their silence carries weight. When they stop engaging, people feel it. It's not loud, but it's noticeable. Their stillness creates space for reflection, and not everyone enjoys reflection. Silence makes people face their own actions, and that's where defensiveness starts. In relationships, this can create a painful loop. The INFJ withdraws to process. The partner gets defensive and demands an explanation. The INFJ feels pressured and retreats even more. Neither side feels heard. The situation escalates, even though the original goal was peace. INFJs don't realize how much their quiet presence affects others. Their energy is strong even when they say nothing. To people who aren't comfortable with introspection, that calm silence feels like a mirror. It reflects their behavior back to them, and that's not always easy to face. The best way to handle this dynamic is with patience. When an INFJ goes quiet, it's a signal that they're thinking, not punishing. If others can resist reacting defensively and give them time, they'll come back ready to talk with clarity and kindness. But if the silence is met with accusation, the INFJ's trust breaks down, and real communication becomes harder to restore. Their silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. But for many people, reflection feels threatening, and that's what makes the INFJ's calm so disarming. When people become defensive around an INFJ, it's rarely because the INFJ did something wrong. Most of the time, it happens because the INFJ's natural depth and awareness make people see parts of themselves they usually avoid. The INFJ doesn't expose anyone on purpose. Their empathy, honesty, and quiet insight just have a way of revealing what's already there. To some people, that's intimidating. To others, it's inspiring. The difference lies in how comfortable someone is with self-awareness. Those who are open to understanding themselves will find the INFJ's insight grounding and healing. But those who rely on masks, denial, or avoidance will feel threatened by that same energy. The INFJ's presence challenges people to be real. Their honesty invites honesty from others, but not everyone is ready for that. That's why defensiveness appears. It's a form of self-protection. When someone isn't ready to face their truth, the INFJ becomes the mirror they want to turn away from. For INFJs, this pattern can be frustrating. They often blame themselves when people react defensively. They replay conversations, wondering what they said wrong or if they were too direct. But the truth is, it's not about delivery, it's about depth. INFJs simply operate on a deeper emotional level, and not everyone is ready for that kind of authenticity. Understanding this helps both sides. For INFJs, it means not shrinking their intuition or honesty to make others comfortable. They don't need to dim their insight, they just need to share it with care. For others, it means learning to see the INFJ's perception as empathy, not judgment. When they stop reacting defensively, they'll realize the INFJ is trying to connect, not criticize. The power of the INFJ lies in their ability to see truth with compassion. They remind people to look deeper, live honestly, and face what's real. That can be uncomfortable, but it's also what creates growth. So the next time an INFJ makes someone defensive, remember this: it's not an attack. It's an invitation to reflect, to understand, and to connect in a way that's honest and freeing. The INFJ doesn't want to expose anyone. They just want to bring light to what's hidden, because they believe truth is the start of real connection.